Our next speaker, as I mentioned in my start, is really the person who introduced me to this concept of Koten Engei, and the person who really opened my eyes to what was going on in Japanese horticulture. I knew there was a lot there. I knew there was a lot of exciting things, but it was the first time I really had a hands-on look at some of the amazing things that were happening from there. So Ozzie Johnson is an accomplished Japanese garden designer and landscaper, and mostly just a plant nerd who loves
There you go.
all things plants. He's worked for a long time with the Atlanta Botanical Garden. He has gone on just numerous collecting trips to Vietnam and China, and many trips to Japan. I've only been lucky enough to travel to go with Ozzie. What was it, just the one time? But we're going to go to Japan together as soon as all this stuff is clear. But
we almost went to Taiwan.
Almost went to Taiwan, and they chickened out because of a minor earthquake. But Ozzie is going to talk to us about some of the plants that are grown in the Koten Engei tradition. He's got a room full of props around him, I think, and we'll finish up with a kind of a discussion together about some of these plants and the growing them and what we think of them and what we like and don't like and whatever else crosses our mind. So please welcome Ozzie. I think since Ozzie is not going to be sharing his screen, if you are looking at this in the gallery view where you can see all us panelists, if you go up to your top right corner on your screen and click on view on your personal space, you can click on speaker, and that way when Ozzie's talking and showing objects, you'll be able to see it more than in a little tiny screen like that. So without further ado, please welcome Ozzie Johnson from Atlanta, plant nerd extraordinaire.
Thank you very much, Mark. First of all, after I try to lower expectations of what you will hear for the next few minutes completely, right down to the bottom, I would like to drag you back into the conversation to make me feel more comfortable, because I like on the Koten Engei stratosphere, I'm like the guy walking around the house looking in the windows and never being able to enter inside, such as our previous two speakers. They have entered and done so well. The fact is that my passion for the weird and wonderful and nerdly plant, and also making a living, has prevented a further indulgence into education, which I would have forgotten most of it anyway. But I would like to refer everyone to, in my investigation of trying to get educated in a couple of days period on Koten Engei throughout the ages, was struck by just the history of Japanese horticulture, which somewhat reflects that of the history of Korean horticulture, in that over the eons, the first people, Japanese ancestry, were the envoys that traveled, the emissaries from the emperors or whatever, the shoguns, and they mostly came back originally, I assume, with their visions of what they saw related to horticulture, and they saw the gardens that the Chinese had developed over the centuries, and the plants and how they were grown, and they fit into the scheme of things. And these were not the peasant farmers, and they were the refined aspects, which immediately the information was imparted to the emperor or whoever was the highest guy that the emissary back and reported to. And then I'm sure they started bringing back not only the plants, but the pots or everything associated with the outside horticulture.
Yeah, certainly from during the Edo period, it seems like there was an emperor, but the shogun was the one who really ruled the roost and was sending people out. And he was definitely, I mean, that was definitely high on his list, was bringing back ornamental and useful. I shouldn't separate those like that. Landscape, ornamental plants, and edible ones.
Yeah, and they were also religious icons outside of the temples and all. You see collected plants today that are very old plants outside the temples, and the lasting structures, especially around Kyoto and in that area, but throughout Japan. One of the things that I wanted to mention was talking a little bit with you about the names attributed to the plants when they started the shogunate, had peaceful era, and he started the samurai were splitting their time between their normal residence in whatever prefecture, if they were divided into prefectures at that time, there were, and they had to spend half their time in the capital city, right, attending the shogun. And he wanted the latest and greatest from the furthest reaches of the Japanese nation at that time. And so the warriors or veterans set up these ways to display these plants, I guess, talking and amongst themselves, and however the pots and plants that had come in through China at that time, and all, they used that to develop their own over the 1,000 years or however it started being.
Yeah, it's interesting when you talk about the, how they display them and all of that. Something that I kept coming back to when I was first really looking into this, when I became very interested, was how often it's tied back to developing traditions of the tea ceremony, and that it's the tea ceremony is, the tea is just a little part of it. It's the setting up setting up for the guests to come for the tea ceremony, and the flowers that you have there, and put a drop of water here so it's beautiful, and how you whisk the tea, how you pour it, how you serve it, the teapot and the cups that it's in. That's the tea ceremony. Is the tea is just the piece around which all the rest of it resides, and that a lot of this is kind of the same way, that the coaster can, what you're doing with the coaster, what you're doing with the display, and what you're doing with the plant, and what's painted on the pot, and all of that feeds into the tradition. It's not, the plant is the piece around which all the rest of it is kind of placed.
But I guess they had to come up with what they were going to call an individual plant.
Yeah.
And I think there were 3 kind of distinctive forms of that. And that first classical name that is ascribed still to this day would be something in mythology, perhaps. And as an example of that is, it's something with like shishi in the name, which is like lion's mane. And the way they explained it in the things that I've read, it's a metaphorical creation of something that connects a story or history with plant. And the words that I've pulled out, like Hatsushimo is a lot of plants have that name on it. It's a first frost, or Akibono is dawn. Asahi is what is that? Rising sun, or something like that. As opposed to a more common way, like weeping, shirare, or small, or hime.
Right.
Then the other one would, the variegation. I don't know whether I pulled my first, I don't see it amassed around me, but the way that you can describe the variegation of a leaf, speckled or streaked or marginal, or those are, and just the color types like aka, red, or bene, red, or shiro, white. You see all of these different terminologies in the names. So you can pull that out and get something out of the name of the plant.
Yeah. On Ryu.
And then it's kind of the Koten Engei, or the potted displays, and all. You see it. I don't know whether you can see the 6-panel screen on my wall in the background, but a lot of the scenes that are depicted on that old screen are everyday life in Japan, and you'll see the garden in a rich person's yard, or whoever is depicted. This is a scene from Kyoto, but you'll see those potted plants within the garden and all. And it was in Kabuki theater. It was kind of the fine arts.
Right.
And the advertising, I think the block print came into being for advertising the spread of the commercial part of the plant. It's like we have a flyer, get a flyer in the mail about.
Right. People are always trying to make money off of plants. You think they'd learned by now that.
Well, let me talk about a few minutes. Those original publications kind of advertising the plants that we are talking about here. The first one that was, I think it was 1827 and all. It was a three volume of explanations and addresses and drawings and all. And it's available today, reprinted in 1977. But
you say available today, meaning that you have it available to you at your house. I have searched all over Japan for that thing. And scoured the internet. So
well, that brings up another purely cultural aspect of Japanese horticulture. And that is that in my travels in Japan, I learned, and people had told me, that the Japanese nurserymen are rather reserved, and it takes a long time, and trust has to build up between communications and all. So one of the things we did when we traveled, not only did we meet a number of nurserymen in our travels, we brought them gifts, tried to start a friendship, invited them back to the US, and that's where Southern Nursery Association, we tried to develop that bond between the two countries, because look at our gardens. How many plants in our gardens are from Japan and China?
Right. Yeah. Hey, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but at the Southern Nurserymen's Association, which is a big trade show for those who don't know, it's held in Atlanta every year. The Saitama Tree Growers Association or something like that would come over.
Yeah.
And one of the few times that I was really legitimately tempted to break my personal moral code was they had brought over the Elysium that you can get now, where that comes out dark purple and then goes variegated. What I know is Murasaki no Sato. I don't know if it's got a different name. And that was there in their booth. And that has been one of the few times where I was like, if I grabbed that and ran fast enough, nobody would catch me. Not that that's a Koten Engei plant, but yeah, it takes a while to get that trust.
Well, it brings us, well, it's still on these volumes put out in 1827. One of the plants that's in this book, and you may bring up that Aoki Akuba shot if you can.
Sure.
One of the plants that I was able,
I may have to zip through some images. I got some Nandina images first, but I can go to that.
Nope.
I went too far.
That one, yeah. The image on the right-hand side, and yes, that image is of an Akuba. And I'm gonna turn this whole over, but.
Are you showing something?
Yes.
All right, I gotta stop sharing one. Yeah. Okay, there you go.
This Akuba was given to me, well, I took cuttings in the garden of Akira Shibamichi, a male dwarf Akuba, of which you just saw in this 1827, from 1827. Okay, I was able to find this because along with the 3 volumes in 1977, an accompanying document was included in those 3 volumes. And guess what? I don't read Japanese very well. I think I can pick out the symbol for tree and weeping, but that's about it. But anyway, in the back portion of this document, which is the front portion for us, but it's since they go the opposite direction, I looked up the index, alphabetical, thank goodness, Akuba, and went through every page of this document until I found 307, which they numbered them on the original. They're not numbered on the original document, but so that I haven't gone through very extensively to find the plants in my garden, if they were grown in 1827 or not, but that's one way I found these document. But I want to get back to my long story, longer. But I acquired what I was given. I didn't buy this. I was nice to a Japanese nurseryman visitor. You know, we always try to, you know, feed them well, take them wherever they want to go, just like they do with us in Japan. But I don't think I could have afforded an Encyclopedia Britannica in the printed volume to take back to him as a gift. But not only did he gift me with this, but he also gifted me with the subsequent 6th volume in 1829. And these have about 500 or so plants depicted.
Wow.
In it. The other one has around 1,500 taxa. I don't know if that represents 1,500 or 1,000. I read somewhere where it was more like 1,000 different. But anyway, that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
Well, let's talk about some plants.
Well, let's look at the whisk Silodium as one of the classical plants, which we can't grow here unless you have a greenhouse. You can grow them, and these are some of the display pots, which they look exactly the same as the other pots. So I can't say whether there are any differences. I can also show these drawings of the way they were displayed.
Yeah. There's another one. When I see those in landscape, often they're just like this mound of fine foliage. But yeah, there's just dozens and dozens of those whisk ferns.
And they had this growing as a weed, some of the different cultivars at the Atlanta Botanical Garden.
In the greenhouse?
Yes, but it was not a weed in the sense that it existed. But so this is one of them, and the other one, or next one, that I have books to show is the Salajanella.
Yeah. Here, I got a little Salajanella here. Got a little guy. I don't know if people or not, but
I think somebody needs to get that.
So this is one that we just have as red form. You get some red coloration, and there you can see the pot. Will not tell you how much this pot costs, but that's the traditional three-legged. This is hand painted and hand thrown. The gold rim, that's still traditional with the display pots.
And here's another cultivar, Salajanella.
Yep.
And this cost, I will tell you how much this cost. I saw this the other day at Trader Joe's. $3.99. I don't know whether it will survive. It's got all of these rootlets on it, having been grown under high humidity in a warm greenhouse, but we have to be careful.
Yeah, well, the Salajanella tamaracina, that's there. I mean, it is, I don't know, that one's hadn't been hardened off, obviously, but it's certainly survives outside for us. So I've grown it as an outdoor plant, but not as a container plant, a pot plant before. So
And yeah, I had one to bring inside. I forgot about it. I was trying to, this time of year, if it goes through some freezes, it'll up, dry up, and it takes a couple of weeks in a greenhouse to green back up, but it will. Those fronds will just unroll and green back up. And
Yeah, for those who aren't familiar, this is Salajanella is a bryophyte fern relative, and pretty cold hardy. This Tamaracina, the species, but it just curls up and dries, and you can just take it and throw it in the corner and kind of forget about it, and then throw it in a bucket of water, and it'll open back up over time. You pot it up, or you can leave it in a pot, but if it's inside, you can keep it growing all season, like the pot that Ozzie has there. But if you have it in a cool area outside or a sunroom, you can just let it kind of go dormant during the winter and stop watering it and let it stay cold, and then start up again in the spring.
here's another stolen virtues of cultivars of Salajanella.
Yeah, there are some beautiful gold and orange and rust and red ones.
I don't know whether you can see the colors well on that.
Not real well. It's kind of blurry.
I apologize for my unprofessionalism. It's a family attribute. So one of the things I found on travels was the wholesale nurseries that put out catalogs.
Mm-hmm.
And they have sections in there that are devoted to the Koten Engei style and all. And
you mean like this?
yeah, Nihon Kaki is one in Saitama Prefecture, as is Cairo N. This is 1995.
Hey, I'm more up to date.
Prices.
This is Chuetsu. This is 2019, 2020. But yeah, some of the catalog I'd pick up, couldn't tell if it was a catalog or a magazine or somewhere in between. You want to show some of those pictures you sent me and I pulled together and talk about some of the plants themselves?
Yeah.
For people to see those
Moving
pictures.
along.
Oh, no, I'm not trying to rush you. I'm just, if you have other things to say.
Well, yeah,
What's that?
It's getting late.
All right, let me go back.
This is a living Omoto type, something you would.
All right, hold on. Let me stop. Am I sharing, or did I just jump off you? There you go. Oh yeah, there you go.
I was trying to figure out the name, which I had lost. The story of this plant is that I brought it from Japan on a visit to my Tony. He got a piece from me. I didn't grow it. I grew it in a pot, so I probably overwatered it. But anyway, he just planted it out in his garden. And I think a year or so ago, I was touring his garden and got one back.
There you go.
And so that's our J.C. Ralston sharing story. There's an advantage.
Right. There's somebody asked the question, what do you grow your Emoto in? What do you pot them in? I just use, regular pine bark potting soil. What do you use?
I do. I enhance it with what I call some mini nuggets also in the mix, and perlite.
Yeah. So
and then,
well-drained mix.
And then this is an orchid pot, so it's extremely well drained.
The person who's asking said they use a Cymbidium orchid mix to grow them in. That's just more expensive than what I want to spend on them.
Exactly.
I use a coarse mix, and they definitely are a plant that you'd rather have dry out than stay too wet. And in the ground, they're quite drought tolerant once they're established. They're very tough. So you want to look at a few pictures and then go back to what you
Yeah,
got?
I just want to mention hepatica, that there's so many wonderful new hepatica, which is teeny tiny in a pot.
Yeah, this catalog I was holding up that's their specialty. That's what's on their cover is, and they have just pages and pages and pages of the most incredible hepatica flowers you've ever seen. And then you get to where they have all the foliage patterns, and it's really pretty amazing. Let's talk about those Nandina that you introduced me to all those years ago. That's misspelled. That should be Kreijushi. This Nandina is about the best one for landscape. These other Nandinas are not necessarily beautiful landscape plants. I don't know. I think this one's been renamed in the US, like San Gabriel or something like that.
Right.
It makes a little mound, but some of these other ones. You said something to me earlier. I didn't get a picture of it, but this plant does it. Where you talked about, what did you call it? Like bamboo raft or something like that?
Yeah, yeah.
And explain that.
Well, I didn't take a picture of it, but the stems, branches grow like this together, and from some point from the main stem, they are fused together. And so there are several cultivars. The ones that I have are normal size Nandina.
Are the leaves normal sized?
No.
Okay.
Well, I need to go out in the garden and take a cutting, but I have a red berried one and a white berried one.
But it also does this kind of congested growth, and then it'll have long branches with basically no leaves on them, but it's a kind of regular sized one. Now this is one of these ones that's super contorted, Orizuru.
Right.
And you sent me a picture of that one as well.
Yep.
But we have a couple. This one does that this one will be much better in a pot. That's a stem that's about 3 feet tall, and that's all of the plant that you're seeing right there. The rest of it's just a bare stem. I think it'll be better in a little putter in a pot. Do you know what Zuru is? I don't know if somebody on our call does as well. Because that's
it could be that crane beak shape to the leaflet.
Okay. There's a white one that had the Orizuru, which is the red one, and then the white one.
That looks like the one I have right here.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Well, does yours have the little tiny leaves? This has the full-size leaves. They're just contorted around.
Oh, these are tiny leaved.
No, this has got full-size leaves. It's just like Orizuru, but white. We also have a couple that we just have as twisted leaves it looks a lot like Orizuru. I don't know if it's perhaps the same thing. And then this other one that's just like it. And as these mature, these become this really nice kind of peach color. Tim Alderton, our horticulturist, was mentioning this at the beginning, early on in the talk before we got started. But they basically look pretty much the same. Just
there's one cultivar that I think Mr. Ishii got it for me, but it was a classical one, was marbled, and it was a combination of the white or cream color and a red. And I can't say why, but the original plant was grafted, and after 20 years or sooner than that in my garden, it finally gave up the ghost. But the seedlings of that were peach colored and are still peach colored. They're in my garden right now. And I don't know how Akira Shibamichi has described, and I think a purple one, and I think Mikonorio Gisu has posted a bluer or dark blue or purple berried one on his site. But
yeah, and there's a question somebody has about, are the Nandina invasive? I know that's a worry some people have. We get seedlings now and then from them, but not very often, not that many. But I doubt they're a whole lot different than other Nandina. Do want to mention one thing about that where people are very concerned about Nandina. Birds don't like Nandina berries, and that's how they spread and become invasive. That's not their preferred food. But there's so many, in some areas, there's so many Nandina growing and so few other fruiting plants like fruiting viburnums and hollies and those kinds of things that the birds are forced to eat Nandina. But they will eat just about anything else before Nandina. So if you don't want them to spread and you want Nandina, plant a lot of other fruit-bearing shrubs and you will have that'll be much less of a problem. We have so many other things in fruit that the birds don't really mess with our Nandina at all. That's just not a high priority food for birds. So how about these guys? Now these are these?
That's
those are your
Ponsaurus. It's a Ponsaurus that
flying dragon, or is this one of the even more contorted ones than flying dragon?
Yeah, it's a dwarf contorted one.
It's pretty that is pretty contorted.
I was hoping that main stem you could get, but it's not too focused. But that's another plant I'm going to look for from the 1800s.
Yeah, there you go. Tell me about these. You and I think we're both a little surprised by these. Were these the ones you were saying were Leposaurus?
Leposaurus, yes. Leposaurus. I've never seen anything like this. Maybe they don't show me these, and my good friends and nurserymen, but anybody has a Leposaurus that looks anything like any of these, I would love to see a modern picture of it.
Yeah, so Leposaurus is fern, and I mean they've got crested and segmented and variegated and everything else. I'm not even sure which Leposaurus that would be. That's pretty amazing. We looked at this, that Saruga Benton that you have in the garden and in book from the 1800s. It's pretty neat. We have that at the Arboretum. Ozzie and I share Akubas back and forth. I think I still owe him a few or a lot.
Yay!
Was that yay for this or yay for the Akuba?
No. Akuba, yeah. Adonis, I can't grow.
Yeah. These like it at least like a bit cooler than we have it. I grew some in the mountains, but that's it. So you have about as much to say about those as I do. These are bulbs or corms, kind of this fine foliage that'll open up, but they have them in oranges and yellows and reds and all kinds of things. But yeah, I'm not too familiar. The rhodias, lots of rhodias. Amoto. This is one of the old books that I got this picture from you. Took it when I was down there, but you can see all the forms. You know, we think of stuff like this as being pretty modern, but this is all from, you know, hundreds of years ago. And this is the Japanese Emoto Association, I guess kind of their yearbook. And you can see all the varieties. So you have, you know, ones that have margins that are upright and tall. You got ones that have white all through them that are upright, like the Kirishima here. And I don't know which all these are. They don't have English in here at all. And, you know, the speckled uprights, and then the variegated little short ones with the sword leaves.
The herbicided ones are very interesting also.
There you go. That's what you were showing, you know, something like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's kind of hard for people to see, but if you can kind of see here, another thing in the Emoto that people often look for, if you can kind of see little ridges in here, call it like a dragon's ridge, you know, or flying dragon. Sorayujishi is one that's you can get fairly often. That's got that contorted leaf. I think maybe in our auction we have a Nobori Ryu, which has that contorted leaf as well. Now, this is one I brought back from Japan, and I may have a new obsession. Cymbidium goringii is a terrestrial orchid, grows in the ground, very shade tolerant. Do you grow these, Ozzie? Just the species?
I don't have any cultivars. I grow the species, and Tony gave me one from which has persisted in my garden also.
Yeah. So they can be kind of marginal, but Tony Avon out at Plant Delights Nursery has one that seems to be hardier than a lot that are out there. And every once in a while he offers it for sale. But the typical species has green flowers, kind of nestled down with the foliage a bit. And you have to make sure you're looking to see it in flower. But there are all these other ones that are just incredible. The colors that are you see in these, and the color of the stems is different, of course, and bicolors and the variegated ones. That's pretty exciting to me. And then of course the acerums. These are the original traditional acerums you would see in Koten, Engei, that were shared with the world by Barry Yinger, who translated a great publication about the acerum. And so traditionally, these old traditional ones, it was all about the foliage. But as we've gotten more to present day, they really the flowers have become a big feature as well. They don't have pictures of the flowers, but these are pretty amazing plants as well. I don't know if I have any more. Oh yeah, you shared some things. I don't think of camellias so much as Koten Engei plants, but I'm not sure why. Are they grown that way?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is from Ogisu's book.
Classical horticulture. Okay. That's interesting. Maybe we'll have to do some of these as well as Koten Engei. Of course, I assume these are some old woodcuts. We do grow this camellia. Are these all camellia, these variegated ones?
Most of them are camellia leaf, variegations on camellia leaf. And you see that, you see that one, you have your arrow on, I want that.
Me too. That's one we may have to split the cost of to bring back. Let's see. We've got, I'm just looking at the Q&A real quick to make sure that we're not missing something. And we have somebody in the audience who's says that a Moto book that I was showing is from a gardening series that has all kinds of different plants that they do. And it is very informative. I agree with you, Michael. There's a lot of, kind of step-by-step guides on how to do it. And yeah, that the Cymbidium book is the 3rd edition, and now there's a 4th edition. I saw that online. Oh, wow. Michael, let's talk about your Cymbidium goringii cultivars. Use covering cups for Shunran spikes. So we got some people who are into those Cymbidiums. They're going beyond me. That's not something I know a whole lot about. Now, is this camellia or is this urea? Do you know?
I don't see what, let me, I'm looking at the chat. No, that's urea.
That's urea. Okay.
That's urea. I put that up there for that. I don't know whether that plant existed or though it was just drawn that way to illustrate the different leaf colorations. And
I like it all grafted like that. That's pretty funny. But yeah, some of these are in the US.
But I did bring one urea cutting.
And you sent me a pic.
Yeah.
So I got you, Ozzie. I'm taking care of you. Do you have a name on this?
Wasn't that the weird weird name like mouton, like French.
Luthiers was that green, thinly margined one, wasn't it? We've got several of these, but don't really have much names on them in the term.
We have some studies to do.
Yeah. Chris is sending me a note. Chris, why don't you see if he'd be interested in doing that, if he wants to say something about the cymbidiums.
Will do.
We'll get back to that. So this is another one you sent me, Ozzie.
It's a Prunus mume.
So, and those who are familiar with the Arboretum, the Ralston Arboretum, may know that Prunus mume, the ume, was one of J.C. Ralston's favorite trees, and he really promoted them to people. And it's one of the earliest flowering, the Japanese flowering apricot, and depending on cultivar can start as early as December, but January, February can snow on it. It's fine, doesn't bother it, and it's intensely fragrant. Intensely fragrant. Let's see, and more ume. More prunus. Are these all Prunus mume, or are they different cultivars? Do you know?
The cherries.
I mean, cherry. Yeah. Prunus. And
this is the list of the 37 genera that Mikanori Ogisu's book describes. And I was just thinking to myself, since I can't read Japanese to get all the details of this book, I was wondering, would the question about the woody trees, is that considered Koten Engei or just a classical plant?
Right.
So yeah. I think it's in their, in their history. It has a big place in their history, whether it's Koten Engei, I don't know.
Right. Yeah. Whether it's grown in the pots, but that's 37 plants, some interesting ones. We were talking just yesterday about Taraxacum, that's dandelions, but there are all kinds of species of dandelions, Taraxacum, the pink ones and white ones, and really beautiful things. Chris, you have Michael up.
I have promoted Michael to a panelist and allowed him to speak if he'd like to join us. Maybe if you have a question for him, that'll get him going.
Yeah, so one of our panelists had some comments, was helping out with some information about the cymbidium, and he is growing those. Michael, what are you growing the Cymbidium goringii in containers at Koten Engei, or in the ground, or what are you doing with those? Gotta get you unmuted there. We can.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Yes.
So I have a presentation actually made for other orchid society. So I'm just going to show you some of the slides.
Okay, just a couple, because we're right at the end of our time. We don't want to go on too long.
So very, very quickly. So very important. You have to grow them in the Asian Cymbidium mix. And unfortunately, you cannot get them in North America. Mm-hmm. So I get all of them in Japan directly. They are not expensive, just very heavy to carry them back. They cover the bag, probably costs no more than $10. It's not expensive.
Okay.
Right?
Hey, I want to interject right here for everybody. I am sure that Michael is following all the rules. Do not go and carry plants back without, you got to get them inspected, and orchids especially it can be as much as a $50,000 fine to bring orchids if you don't have the correct permit. You need CITES permits and you need inspection. So I like to throw that out there.
Yeah. No, of course. Like when you bring the plants back, everything you need to have paperwork, right? So that's always the case. So I'm going to screen share. So this is how I do the Goringia. It's very, very complicated. I'm going to screen share. It's a chart. So you guys can take whatever. I'm just going to screen share it. It's just easier.
Sure.
It's one chart. Just share screen. Okay, can you see now? No?
No.
Host is a host disabled.
Hey, Michael, you know what I'm thinking?
Yeah.
Rather than do a presentation, it sounds like you've got some great knowledge.
Because the information in English is all wrong. All the information that I obtain is from Japanese readings, all the books, and I communicate with Japan vendors directly. I buy from only reputable Japanese vendors. I just sent him an email like yesterday. I have some questions.
Yeah. So what I was going to say is I think this would be a great topic for us to talk about. But rather than have you take 2 minutes to talk about it,
it takes longer than that.
Get Chris Glenn your contact information, and we'd love to have you give a full talk about this at sometime a little later, because I think you could. It'd be better to do the topic justice.
Yeah.
How does it sound?
Yeah, I think that's good, because it's actually very complicated. It's
That
not easy.
Full talk would be fantastic. I appreciate that. So yeah, Chris, if you can make sure you get that information from Michael, I think it would be amazing.
Oh, actually, I'm able to share the screen now. So here, this is the summary.
That's a lot. We're out of time for the talks though. That's
no problem.
I'm
Next
just going to rush you through. No. So I definitely want to get you to talk, because I'm very interested in that, and I think we have other people who would be interested as well. So Chris will get that information, and we'll touch base and see when's a good time to do it. Maybe just in the next couple of months, we can have you on for a lecture. That would be very good.
Sure.
Let's get some other, if there are any other questions about what we're going on, let's do that. And then if there are any questions about the auction as well. And I see that there are other people who have said that they love to hear this talk. So Michael, we're going to get you back for one of our Friends of the Arboretum lectures and make sure everybody on this program knows about it. All right. The auction is still going on. It will be ending shortly. It's got about, I think, 10 minutes. So those of you who have already logged into it, you want to go ahead and check your bids, that kind of thing. And Dennis, you got that right. We'll go in about 10 minutes. I think you can send a note to everybody who's participating, who's already gotten into the auction, that it's 10 minutes. Everybody, all our panelists, all our guests, I really appreciate everybody participating in this. It's, as I said, this has been a real passion of mine for quite a while, but with at least a couple of the types of plants. And I'm really excited to learn more about the Cymbidiums myself. So we're going to have Michael back, and he's going to teach me. I had a couple questions about Mikanori Ogisu's book. I don't know what the title is. I just always hear it called Ogisu's The Purple Book. And availability, it was, I think, privately printed. I know two people who have copies, Roy Lancaster and Ozzie Johnson. Those are the only two people that I know of with copies.
Roy probably has an English version. Mikanori gave some of the ambassadors of whatever countries he was interested in giving them to, English version of that.
So yeah, it's on my list as well. Very, very, very much. Any other questions or thoughts? Am I missing anything, Chris? The auction is going well. It's going to be over at 12:15, which is in about 6 minutes. We still have some fantastic plants in there. I might actually be able to show some plants are going to be in there. Hold on, I have that are in there. Here's one of the rhodias. This is one called Taishu, which has a really nice kind of yellow variegation. Any of the pictures you see in ceramic pots, the plants are not going to be in ceramic pots. Those are our display ones. They'll be in plastic pots. We wouldn't be able to afford to send them to you. What do you think of that, Ozzie? You got that one? We like to tease. We also like to share once we can. This is kind of the classic ram's horn type rhodia that Ozzie showed, a really great variegated one. This is Soraishi. This has like a thin little margin on there. Ozzie's super contorted there. Yours had more variegation, didn't it? Or you had a different one with variegation? Or was it that a picture I was showing?
Oh, this has very little variegation. It's a different.
Okay. Some of these don't show themselves off as well as I'd like. This is Kinshoju, which has kind of this modeling on there. But when it's really growing happily and the new growth comes out, it's much brighter. Some of these, the color kind of fades as the season progresses. And these ones with names, when they were first acquired from Japan, in most cases, were very, very expensive. Fuji no Yuki is one of the more vigorous ones we grow with this kind of really stable, wide white margin. Actually has fruit on it. So if you bid on this one, you'll get the fruit as well. But that's a showpiece in the garden or in a container. Let's see. We've got another minute or two for the auction. I don't know if anything else is going, but we do have a whole bunch of ardesias. I'm not sure which ones are in the auction or not, to be honest. Shirafu Shiramin. Shiramin's a really dwarf small leaf one. This is variegated. The other form is solid green, but a pretty vigorous one. And you can see the fruits that you'll get on ardesia. It's one of those few plants that seems to fruit well indoors as well as outdoors. A lot of plants don't do that so well. Another one, Kukikan, with a nice white margin. One of the things I'm really interested in is growing these side by side, because there are several that have a white margin like this, and so it'll be interesting to compare them one to another and really verify what's different about them, what isn't. But some of the things that the Japanese look for are certainly variegation, growth habit size, leaf, kind of the way the leaf, does it have a normal outline or is it contorted or twisted or misshapen? This is one just called Fuji. Got kind of red stems and these kind of light green margins. That's pretty nice. Is there anything in the auction people have questions about? It is ending in 2 minutes. I want to thank everybody for joining us. We'll hang out for a question or two afterwards, but I just want to thank all of y'all for joining us. And I want to especially thank our sponsors who made this all possible. Share the screen one more time. The Japan Foundation Center for Global Partnership, their support was critical to making this happen. We're really excited to have been able to work with them and excited to bring this tradition to a broader audience. And I want to thank Matsuoka-san, Peter Lin, and Ozzie Johnson for participating in this. And hope that you all of you who are joining us, especially those who aren't already members of the Arboretum, will keep an eye on our virtual offerings. We have a lot happening in January and February, and that'll just ramp up into March and April. And we're going to have Michael joining us in the not too distant future to talk about Cymbidium. That's very exciting for me, because that's something that, until I really started looking at some of these books and things, I didn't realize how much interest I had in that. So this is just the beginning of our Koten Engei program in terms of the Arboretum. This is our kickoff symposium, but we have developed significant collections, like I said, of rhodia and ardesia, and we will be displaying them both on our website in some galleries, as well as we'll be displaying them at the Arboretum for when we open back up and people start visiting. So we really want this to be a tradition that becomes more widely known and widely enjoyed by people all across the country. Yeah, Ozzie.
You might address questions that anyone might have on the names that come in on a Japanese plant, whether they're...
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so there's a real issue. People have in the past, in the present maybe, I guess, can be afraid of Japanese names, but when a plant is given a name, that's its name. So a lot of times people have brought plants in and either didn't know the name, didn't get it when they were in Japan, or didn't care about it, or felt like they couldn't sell it with a Japanese name and put a English name on it. And there's a group of us, botanic gardens, nurseries, interested individuals who are working with some folks in Japan, especially Mikanori Ogisu, to try and get the correct original Japanese names on the plants. You know, a great example, I think I have it. Maybe I don't. One of the Ardisia Amanagawa, which means it translates to Milky Way. You know, Amanagawa is the name, and that's not difficult to learn. And we can call it the Milky Way Ardisia or Milky Way Marlberry as a common name, but we should keep that name straight. And that's part of what we're doing. As I mentioned, we have the largest collection of Ardisia in North America, and we will be verifying names and hope to serve as a reference point so people can figure out those correct names for Ardisias and Rhodias and those threadleaf Nandinas as well. That's education, it's sharing. So look for more Koten Engei if you enjoyed this. And we really, really appreciate all of you joining us and being with us on our Saturday morning.
Yay.
Yay, there you go. John Grimshaw. Looking at Japanese names at the RHS nomenclature group. This would be fantastic to work together on. That's amazing, John. Get in touch and let's see how we can make that happen. Anything else from my team? I want to thank Chris Glenn and Tim Alderton and Dennis Carey for answering questions and doing all the behind the scenes work, and Douglas Ruin and Arlene and Catherine for all their support in this. And I just want to thank everybody for being a part of this, and hope to see you again with more Koten Engei soon.
Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Thanks. I had fun.
Me too.